Explaining entertainment, keeping you ahead of the culture curve is what we do each and every day here on the WDW Pro channel. We are slaves to the truth. We love it. We keep doing it. And part of that is trying to answer your questions. One of the first things that we did when we opened up memberships a little over a week ago now is we decided that Cues from You would be a brand new feature. And that is an opportunity for members that are just above the entry level membership and then all the way up to the top. They get the opportunity to ask questions, and then we do a dedicated video all about it. Jonas, are you excited about being part of this very first Cues from You?
I am excited. In fact, my first question was going to be, what are we doing here, Pro? But you've answered that very well.
Yes, I apologize. We had a funny bit there, but the bit has been snipped, so I guess we'll move right along. But we've already got 10 questions in this very first entry, and we think these are going to be part of an excellent conversation between myself and Jonas as we try to unravel these queries that have been sent our way. So, Jonas, take it away.
All right. The first one is from Discrapto, cool name. With Disney seeing that Nintendo is maybe going to eat away part of its share of the animated cinema releases, do you think they will try to fight fire with fire using their own gaming IPs, the one they killed, or fight a campaign against them in the media while going all in with their agenda in all studios? That is an interesting question.
Well, one thing that I will say is that Wreck-It Ralph, they have, they have the ability to go back to that, but I don't know how successful that will be, given that now versus Mario in the Nintendo Cinematic Universe, that may come across as being sort of a hand-me-down or a poor man's version of that same idea, right? We want the best and most awesome video game characters, and they're all in the Nintendo Cinematic Universe.
It's also interesting because Disney Interactive, which was a segment of the company for a very long time, and it was a losing segment of the company for a very long time. It only made a profit when Disney Infinity hit right at the Toys to Life phase. And
I had forgotten about that too. Yeah.
As soon as Disney Infinity didn't turn a profit, they shut down the division entirely. I think that if Disney keeps going this multiverse route, there's a possibility of that being used. Of course, that's also kind of part of what they did in Wreck-It Ralph, putting whatever they could on screen. I think they'll have a little bit more difficulty getting Sonic the Hedgehog and Mario to appear in their movies from here on out.
Absolutely. And Descripto, what I would say also about this is that we sort of already know their strategy, and that is that they're going back to the intellectual properties they believe will carry them across the line, that being another Frozen movie, that being another Zootopia movie, a Moana live-action release. They are going to lean heavily into existing IPs, not going necessarily for new stuff, and that's why you're getting Toy Story 5, and who knows, if that doesn't work, you just might get Toy Story 6. You're going to learn to like it.
All now, right, I will say, if they decide to make a Maui Mallard movie right now, I might tune in for that.
There you go.
All right, Tommy Tables, would you say that the announcements at Celebration are the strongest indicator that Kathleen Kennedy is here to stay and not leaving Lucasfilm anytime soon?
Well, that's a great question, Tommy, and very much appreciate you being a member and partaking in this first Cues from You. The Kathleen Kennedy situation at Celebration is interesting. It was never likely that Kathleen Kennedy was going to announce her retirement at Celebration. You have to understand that for her and her perception of where she exists in the pantheon of Hollywood, that announcing your retirement at a sci-fi convention, that's beneath her, in her opinion. I mean, really and truly. Where she would announce her retirement, were that to ever happen, and I'm not sure that she would frame it that way, but let's change it to her leaving Lucasfilm and possibly taking a legacy position, something that in name at least is bigger. Were she to do that, she would probably do a major sit-down interview that would be aired on television, or it would be from a stage with some of her Hollywood contemporaries, some of her peers that reach to her level. She wants to have it be on Good Morning America, that sort of thing. She doesn't want to do it in front of a bunch of people waving lightsabers. And I hate to put it that way, but I just don't think that was ever likely. When we will find out the next kind of big steps for Lucasfilm is going to be after Indiana Jones 5. And that's always been true. Anybody who told you that we would get something before then just doesn't understand how the industry works. If Kathleen Kennedy comes out and announces that she is retiring or she's moving on before Indy comes out, then that is a negative sign, and it would create all kinds of rumors and allegations that she's stepping away because the movie is bad and all this sort of thing. They do not want in any way for the box office to be damaged by something like that. So no matter what, they're going to wait until after that. And we're just going to have to see how this box office performs. If Indy 5 does great, well, things can change. But as of right now, I do think that Kathleen Kennedy is at the end of her career, and we will probably hear more about that late this year and next year. Jonas, any thoughts on it?
No, I think here's the thing about predicting the retirement of Kathleen Kennedy. Eventually, it will be true.
Yes, eventually everybody's gonna bat 1,000 eventually.
Yes. Araxis, here is a question that might be a little bit out of the wheelhouse. Those are always wonderful, though. But I am not sure of whom to ask. If Ike Pearlmutter was so against the course that the MCU was going to take, then why didn't he make any effort to try and clean up the comics division, which was, to my understanding, he had complete control of the woke infection that has effectively killed off Marvel Comics sales. Granted, the monies of the comic sales could be considered small change for him and the company at large. He doesn't strike me as a man to leave money on the table, so to speak. I think you know the answer to this, bro.
Well, let's hear what you think first, Jonas. Then I'm going to bring in something that Clobberin Times and I discussed. I don't know if we discussed it on record or not, but go ahead with your thoughts on this, and then I'll bring mine in.
I think that at the time that Kevin Feige was given a position reporting directly to Alan Horn, there was a line item in there where it also said he was in charge of the comics division at the same time. I believe that Ike Pearlmutter was put in charge of consumer products, which when you are a consumer products division of Marvel, you do what you can with the materials that you're given. I would imagine that would lead to a focus more on the legacy characters. I don't think he had a lot of control over comics at all.
Well, Jonas, to add to that, what I would say is that I think the industry basically has decided that the comic print division, that it just isn't very viable anymore, and they have largely handed that off to the crazies. This is something that came up when I was talking with Clobberin Times. He worked in the comic book industry for decades on the retail side of it, and he's essentially said that that's what he thinks is going on, is that these companies, they're just not interested any longer in trying to control the comic book side of things. It's so small, it's on such a decline that it may just be at that, that last stage of life in terms of the division. So
that's a tragedy.
It really is, and it's a beautiful art form, and it could be revitalized. I don't know if it'll go digital or if it will stay, in physical media somehow, but it definitely is sad to see that have happened. And ultimately, you have to consider that as you eliminate the source of such great stories, that has to have a negative impact on the rest of all of Marvel or all of DC or what have you. So
yeah, it's a very short-term view of a company that is very focused on IP generation. I don't understand why they would lop off an entire futures department for their intellectual property. I'll end it there. So
absolutely.
Jex Refi says, do you think the Daily Wire, with respect to their entertainment initiatives, is having any effect, I added my own emphasis there, on greater pop culture environment? Their mission is noble, but one has to wonder if they can ever grow out of being conservative entertainment. That's a good question.
There's a couple of things to think about this. One of the things you have to think about is, do they wish to grow out of being conservative entertainment, or is that their goal? If their goal is to be specifically conservative entertainment, which I would assume it is, then no, I don't think they'll ever grow out of that concept. The other part of this question, though, do I think they're having any effect on greater pop culture environment? Well, sure, they're having some effect, but how do you measure that? I will say that I had great hopes for this being another source of competition for Disney after the Gina Carano situation. So Gina Carano picked up by the Daily Wire, and Terror on the Prairie, I believe, was her movie that she starred in. And, I would like to say to everybody out there that was a smash hit, that it really, it changed everything. It opened up a completely new market for conservative entertainment. I don't think that's true. I think that it probably didn't do as well as they were hoping. And I say that with no joy at all. I think that if all things were fair, given the way that Gina Carano was treated by Lucasfilm and Disney, that, in a fair universe that's completely fair in every single way and every single time, Gina Carano would have had one heck of a hit of a movie. But, it is what it is. Now, what you've got to consider is, can the Daily Wire get better in the future with bigger budgets and more savvy contributors to the movies that they're making, perhaps the shows that they're making? We know that they're getting into children's entertainment. And so I hope that they get better and that they produce content that really drives eyes to screens. And I hope that for the same reason that I hope that for everybody, because if you are successful at creating entertainment that people enjoy, then that drives every other competitor out there to try to do the same, because it forces the hand. This is exactly what we are seeing out of the Nintendo Cinematic Universe right now. Disney will have no choice but to abandon some of their frivolous attempts at socio-cultural engineering that they've been doing with their most recent releases, because they simply can't produce flops while Illumination is out there making hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. Nintendo is sharing in that. You've got DreamWorks now coming out with Shrek 5 in the future and potentially relaunching that franchise. And so it seems to me that more competition simply breeds better results for everybody. At least it does if you're going to survive. And the ultimate winner there is the consumer. So when it comes to the Daily Wire, I give them kudos. I hope that they do a good job. That's not a political statement. It simply is that I want more competition and more players in entertainment, period. What say you, Jonas?
I think the Daily Wire is influencing the greater pop culture just with doing what they do best, which is creating political and politically informed podcasts. And their documentaries are excellent.
Their documentaries are very strong.
Yes. Even their weak documentaries do hard-hitting work. The issue here is I don't want to say they've got one guy working on children's content right now, but the one guy that I know of working on children's content, Ethan Nicole, is hilarious. He used to work with the Babylon Bee, and he worked on Axe Cop, I do believe. He's creative. I just don't know if one show, maybe two that I'm aware of right now, is enough to get them into that space. We might be looking at a Yahoo Screen situation here, where everyone's heard of one piece of content. In this case was Community Season 6 or whatever. They need more, and they need to keep doing what they're doing. They'll never jeopardize that. Don't jeopardize that, Jeremy Boring. Just keep going in the directions that you're going, and if something works, you keep doing it. All right.
Sure. And we're not diving into politics. We're not taking a political stand. We're simply saying that from all sides, if you produce good content, good things will come. And from that good content, competition will occur.
Rob Weisenhut, the unceremonious dismissal of George Lucas's direction and influence on Star Wars seems to be the deepest river of bad blood between current Lucasfilm and the fandom. How much would a return by George for one or two projects go towards invigorating the canon and repairing the goodwill of fans?
One of the things that is easily forgotten is how that back when Disney first purchased Star Wars, probably the majority of people were very excited because they were wishing to get away from George Lucas, given the prequels and given the reception that those had. People had, by and large, the perception that Star Wars was not going in a good direction, that they were not trusting in the idea of getting a sequel trilogy from George Lucas that would be sufficient, that it would go back to the quality and the theme and the vision of the original trilogy, not the prequels again. And how things have changed. That's largely because Disney brought the budgets necessary, and they brought the visuals, right? They nailed the visuals in terms of it feeling and sounding like a Star Wars movie again. The problem was that they inverted the hero's journey. They copy and pasted the original trilogy, at least in the first New Hope and The Force Awakens. And then Disney went on the strangest path I think I've ever seen in a major investment. They paid all this money to have this franchise, and Disney systematically began desecrating the characters they had spent so much money to purchase. And that is just bizarre. Imagine if you bought, for example, Superman. That would be a huge purchase, right? To buy the intellectual property of Superman. But let's say it happened. Let's say a company bought Superman. And let's say then that company decided, well, you know what? Superman is an old character, even though we've bought Superman and all the characters associated with him. He's really an old character, and we're going to create our own versions for the future. And we're going to leave Superman in the past. So we're going to do a story where we're going to make Superman sort of be kind of a failure, and he never really succeeded in anything. Lois Lane left him, right? He just can't beat Lex Luthor in the end, and we're going to bring new characters to the front. That would be really dumb because you paid to buy Superman. And when Disney paid to buy Star Wars, they paid to buy Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Princess Leia. And somehow they didn't realize that. They didn't realize that that's what the market wanted. And that's just bizarre to me. Now, in terms of bringing back George, would that make a difference? Well, the only thing that will make a difference is good content that restores the legacy of the original characters. And outside of that, Star Wars simply will never be as big as it once was. There's opportunity if you create good content within this franchise to have fans and to do decently. We've seen that with The Mandalorian this season. In the first 3 episodes, the second episode was quite strong. And in the latest Nielsen ratings, we've seen that there was a significant bump for The Mandalorian. It crested over the 1 billion minutes watched mark for its 3rd week. However, the quality then drops precipitously. And it's likely, therefore, that viewership will tank over time. We don't know that, but that's what we suspect we'll see based on the past and what we've seen with other series and with Star Wars content. So where does this go? Well, they have to make good Star Wars stuff again. That's the bottom line. George or no George, Star Wars cannot continue. It cannot be a major franchise unless Lucasfilm gets its act together and begins creating content that lots and lots of people can enjoy, not content that is divisive and that fans find contentious and that continues to support and uphold a sequel trilogy that many fans loathe. Jonas?
No, I wholeheartedly agree with what you just said. The problem with working with George Lucas is in his long and storied history, George Lucas has accepted help where he needs to accept it, but the more established he's become, he's not shown himself to be a great collaborator after he holds all of the purse strings, and having to work with people that he has described unkindly. I think that would be a very difficult proposition for him. He's shown up on the set of The Mandalorian, and I'm not sure if we've seen set photos of him showing up anywhere else. So there is some hope there, I do suppose. But at the same time, I think he's enjoying his retirement and trying to get over his ex-wife. And by that, I mean Star Wars.
Yes, and George Lucas is a visionary. He is someone that if you look into various inventions and patents, you will find his name on things that you can't believe. George Lucas has had an impact on the entertainment industry that is hard to even describe. But would he come back for Star Wars at this point? Well, I just don't think that George Lucas cares very much at all for Robert Iger, nor for Kathleen Kennedy. And that's very hard for me to see happening as long as those two are in charge.
Hey, quick guess, Pro. Where do you think they did the sound for the Mario Brothers movie?
I know the answer to that. Go ahead and tell them. Yeah, that's
Skywalker
cool.
Sound. They did the sound. It's Skywalker Sound. It's all over the place. Industrial.
And isn't it funny that they're doing that? And that's the movie that is really turning a corner in terms of taking away Disney's crown in feature length animation. And there it is, a Disney subsidiary doing the audio for it.
Yeah, and they need to keep that separate because that is a money-making division. Death Scythe might be more in Mexican Iron Man and VR's realm of expertise, but here goes. If Ike Pearlmutter, Nelson Peltz, and George Lucas combine their forces in a proxy war with Disney, what chances, if any, would they have in removing the board when they will go against giants as BlackRock and Vanguard? Don't those companies have more and
Well, we're
look to
not.
be cut off here?
Well, no. I think it's intentionally left ... But so here's the deal: Perlmutter, Nelson Peltz, and George Lucas have a lot in terms of Disney stock. They have a lot, and but they don't have as much as BlackRock and Vanguard combined, or some of these other institutional investors. No. Another person to be watching here is the former CEO of Disney, um, Eisner, for example. He has a vast amount of stock. In fact, he has the most of any single individual. But here's the thing: you're never going to break the institutional investors and what they want unless something happens that causes lots and lots and lots of those little guys to decide they've had enough and that they're willing to hop aboard whatever proxy war might exist. Now, we're not here to give you financial advice in any way. Please do not make any financial decision based on this video. Seek the advice from a certified financial advisor whom you trust for those kinds of decisions. But that said, if Perlmutter, Peltz, George Lucas, and whoever else want to combine their forces, and if the Disney stock is in such a situation that regular average people who own shares of Disney are saying, whoa, 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 what's going on with my money? That is the point where you could see the pendulum shift in terms of the leadership at Disney recognizing that they cannot win in a proxy war. Just like we saw with this last one, Disney caved and gave almost everything, other than the China stuff, gave almost everything to Peltz in order to placate him and take away the proxy war. And that's usually what happens in these sorts of situations, is that the company will do everything in their power to prevent a legitimate proxy war that has a chance of overturning what they want. They'll do almost anything to stop that, because not only is it humiliating to those in charge, but it also has a major impact to those in charge, and they're not used to being the ones who have a major impact upon them. Jonas, what do you think about it?
Proxies are a fascinating thing. If you look at the proposals from the annual shareholders meeting, there were 3 proposals that were not directly made by the company itself. Two of them were more conservative leaning, and one was not so conservative leaning. The conservative leaning ones had less than 10% affirmative, and the not so conservative one had a 30% vote in its favor, which I'm pretty sure would make the company uneasy. This might be due to the fact that 65% of all shares of the Walt Disney Company are held by institutions. There's a wall right there. Not knowing what those institutions lean to, the right or the left or the woke or the non-woke, or however you want to divide it up, that's quite a big hurdle to jump over. You have to start getting the institutions to go in line with these proxy people who would be.
But the only way for institutions to really start to break in that direction is if the value of their stock holdings, if that's dropping, and then you find out that, well, these corporations are not so different than individuals. They also can have differing opinions on what should be done, and the more stress that they're put under, the more likely they are to change their position and be in favor of making changes within a company. So it's not impossible, but right now, before we would see anything like this, we would need to see this Iger bump that has decreased over time diminish even more significantly, and then the pressure would build where a change would have to happen. All right, Jonas, final thoughts. Did you enjoy this very first edition of Cues from You? Is this a keeper, you think?
Man, I love this. I want to do this one every day.
We know it. Let's not go that far, but it does let us get to some of these deep questions that our most attentive members have for us, and that's a lot of fun to get these kinds of questions that are on the minds of people within the community that otherwise would not get answered. And so, folks, if you are interested in getting your questions in for Cues from You each and every week, You'll have to become a member at the tier 2 level or above. Remember that tier 1 is basically the cost of a soda, and it gets you all kinds of exclusive content. But to be able to ask a question that gets answered in its own specific video like this, its own dedicated video, you are going to have to get it at the tier 2 level or higher. But we do hope you enjoyed this. We look forward to presenting these more and more, and we'll see how this goes. We'll see what the audience response is. Of course, you can still add to the conversation. Please drop a comment down below. If you like content like this, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe, and you can stick it to the algorithms. When you click it, we're talking about that notification bell. Jonas, where can people find you on this great, big, beautiful web out there?
Well, here on the WDW Pro channel, but also at That Park Place, where I like to do investigative work. Whether or not I like the outcomes of it, I do like to dig in and find out what the truth is. And I also have a YouTube channel called Jonas J. Campbell. It took a long time to come up with a name, where I have a series called Everything Woke About, where I like to break down what's in seems to be children's content these days and find out just what is it that might be sneaking past parents' eyes.
For those of you who remember Crocodile Dundee, no, he did not say a walkabout. He said everything woke about. So there you go. Well, Jonas, thank you for being here today. Thank you for being a part of this very first Cues from You. We don't know who all will be joining us from time to time to deal with these, but we're so excited to get to do them. We're so thankful for all of our members. We're so thankful for all of the responses to this channel and to the videos that we do. Each and every one of you, you are seen, you are appreciated. We love having you here. You are truly the electricity that drives all of this. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.